You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 187 of the Just Japan podcast, everything you want to know about Japan. My name's Kevin O'Shea, and I'm the host of this weekly podcast about all things Japanesey. And this week, we've got another great episode for all of you awesome folks out there. This week, I'm going to be talking to two returning guests all about what they did in Japan years ago for fun versus what they do now. That's right. So I talked to a couple of people who've been living in Japan for some time. One of our guests arrived in Japan in 1992. We talked about what were the things that they did for entertainment, for fun on the weekends after work back then, and what are the kind of things that they do nowadays. And of course, I also share my perspective. So another great episode talking about fun then and now in Japan.
The legendary Ginsu knife, the sharpest offer on television. But now there's Ginsu World Class, the finest knife in the world.
Finer than our German knives?
Yes, even finer than our own classic Ginsu. The high-carbon stainless steel blade has incredible strength. Even with abuse like this, it still never needs sharpening. Nothing cuts it like the Ginsu World Class. It's as simple as that. Even with its unique triple ground curved blade, it's yours for only $29.95. Complete with this double guarantee. Plus, these steak knives and accessory knives free. Order yours now.
For rush delivery, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-652-4242 or send $29.95 plus $4.95 shipping to Ginsu World Class, P.O. Box 4951, Omaha, Nebraska.
All right, guys. Now, of course, remember, find the Just Japan podcast. We're all over the place. We're all over the social medias. You can find us on iTunes, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud, on Libsyn. So welcome to episode 187 of the podcast, and we've got two returning guests, two friends of the show, Mr. Andrew Higgins and Mr. Kansai PJ. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks for having us back.
Oh, it's always great to have you guys back. Friends of the show since the beginning, back in the day.
Yes.
Back in the day, and today we're not going to be talking about so much, not a really heavy topic. But a topic I think is going to be fun to have a chinwag about. And this is more of kind of a free-form episode, folks out there listening. We're having a conversation here. That's what we're doing. We're having a conversation here. So what I wanted to bring Andrew and PJ on tonight to talk about maybe how things have changed for them in Japan between the time they've arrived and now with regards to kind of personal entertainment. Kind of like, what did you do when you first arrived in Japan? What did you do on a Friday night for fun or on a weekend? Or what did you do after work for fun? What were the different... And it doesn't necessarily have to mean like party, but like what were the things you did to entertain yourselves versus now what you do? So before we get into that, Andrew, in a nutshell, who the heck are you and where are you from?
Oh, gosh, I don't know who I am. No.
Identity crisis.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm Higgins in Japan, Andrew. If you follow me on Twitter, Higgins82, Facebook.com/Higgins in Japan, all that good stuff. I've been living in Japan for about 6 years, originally from America. And I sometimes make videos for YouTube and sometimes appear as a guest on this podcast.
Nice. And aside from that, you're living the dream. You're living the dream.
Yeah, pretty much.
Living the Japan dream. That's actually one of the big ironic jokes that people around here make here in Beijing. You're like, how you doing? I'm just like, the people are just like living the dream, living the Beijing dream. And it's just soaked with sarcasm. So PJ, who the heck are you and where you're from and all that stuff?
I'm me.
You are you.
Who am I? Kansai PJ. I've known Kevin a wee bit.
Mm-hmm.
when we both did YouTube. I don't do that anymore per se.
Back in 2008, we met.
Was it 2008?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
Damn.
I met you like literally probably I would say within a month of me arriving in Japan.
Yeah.
Like pretty much right away. Met you and why is I'm having a complete brain fart here. Met you and one other YouTuber, woman, tall woman, blonde hair, ran marathons. Chris, yes, that's right. Yeah, Chris. You were the first two YouTubers I ever met in person.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that was a big yawn, folks.
You could have done much better.
Yeah, I'm exciting. I know. So you're a former YouTube ilk. So yeah, I know PJ. And like, let's see, where do you guys live right now? I mean, not exact GPS coordinates, but where do you roughly live in Japan? Just to give the listeners a bit of a bearing if they don't know who you are.
I'm in Osaka City.
Mm-hmm.
Osaka.
Oh yeah, and
sounds so strange.
And I live up in Tochigi. I live in Utsunomiya City, probably about let's say an hour and a half north of Tokyo.
Wow.
Okay, so, yeah, depending on which, I mean, I can get on the Shinkansen and be there in 45 minutes if I really want to be. So,
is it pretty rural where you're at?
No,
suburban?
No, not at all. Yeah. Utsunomiya is about it's over 500,000 people.
Okay.
So
really?
It's a pretty big. Yeah. It's a lot bigger than where I first started at. That's for darn sure.
Ooh. So this might lead into some of the adventures that you may have had when you first arrived. Well, I mean, okay. So, I mean, I think, let's get in our Wayback Machines. Woo, woo. That's the Wayback Machine sound. Woo, woo. You hear that? Oh my gosh, technology. Woo,
I can feel hair growing as we speak.
So we go to our Wayback Machine. Well, not that far. We're not going to be Neanderthals or anything like that. But let's go back to when we first arrived in Japan. Now, of course, guys, I'm saying this as if I were in Japan right now, but I'm not. Now, when I first arrived in Japan back in 2008, I suppose, I was hardcore hitting the YouTube video blogging thing, and I think that really sucked up a lot of my time, my free time. So when it was a weekend, I was out video blogging. If it was a weeknight, I was out video blogging and wrapping all these beautiful little vlogs up with my Windows Movie Maker on my Samsung laptop.
Oh, man.
My Samsung, I believe, using possibly Windows 2000. I don't know, something wretched like that. And that's, I was doing other things as well, but I mean, when I think of like my main preoccupation in life, it was certainly YouTube. That was what I was all about. Yeah. And I think
I think when I
I
was just gonna say, when I first came here, I think my definite goal with YouTube at least was kind of to be able to show off like to my friends and family back home kind of what I was doing. I had no real intent of like, continuing to do it for such a long time, but it was more just like, hey, like I'm here and my family's back home and they want to see what I'm doing and they want to see what's going on. So I lived out in the countryside, so it was really, really easy to just go out with my camera at any point and walk around town. So
so you were doing that kind of similar thing. Now, PJ, how about you? I mean, you first got to Japan, it was maybe pre-YouTube.
Yeah, pre-internet. I was here, well, not pre-internet, but I mean
The military had it then.
Yeah, well, it was 92. In Japan, very few people had it. It was dial-up, AOL. So there was no YouTube. Not really.
So when you first arrived in 92, what were you doing? I mean, we'll go into more depth later on. No gory details or anything. But I mean, what kind of things?
Why is that for me?
So I mean, so there we go. There's a whole different era. We're talking about using the YouTubes and whatnot when we first got there. So you were there, basically pre-internet. We'll say, for lack of a better term. So what were you doing to entertain yourself when you first got there?
Well, when I first got here, I didn't even have a notebook computer. They were too expensive back then. I don't think I got one until '94. And there were only 3 channels on TV, or 4 channels. So mostly, if you didn't go out with a friend, I lived in Himeji back then, so we'd go out drinking with friends, or I'd go to a video rental store, and a couple blocks from where I lived, and they only had two rows, or not 2 shelves of American videos. I mean, maybe 25, 30 videos tops.
Wow.
And I watched all of those within the first year.
Five times each.
Oh, you know it. And then you'd get excited when NHK or one of the other channels was doing an English movie night.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, my Japanese was much better then.
I wonder why. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could rewind more, and when I came to Japan in 2008, obviously, when you first met me, PJ, I was already taken. So I mean, I had a partner. I didn't come to Japan as a single man. I came with my wife. I mean, we got married shortly after I arrived, but we were together for a few years before I came to Japan. But for those who listen, know that I did live in Korea for about 5 years. And when I got there in 2002, early 2002, and I was single in those days, and there was 2 phases of things. I think when I first arrived in Korea, my first initial month or so, I didn't know any foreigners. And I was too kind of scared to kind of interact with the locals. So I found a video shop between the walk between my school and my apartment, which was probably about a kilometer, so maybe like a 10-minute walk. And I would I had a VCR in my apartment. Every single night, I would stop by, and it was they had a much bigger selection than the one you were dealing with, 10 years earlier than that. They had hundreds of movies, but I would literally pick up maybe 2 to 3 videos a night, and I would just go back to my apartment, and maybe get some beer, or not beer, something, and I'd just sit on my bed and watch videos. That's what I did for my first maybe 2 months there, just kind of like a little hermit. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Those were the days. That's what you did when you had 2 choices. You went out or you went to a video store, really.
And that's when my experience was when I first kind of discovered that there was actually a foreign population in the city I lived in, outside of Seoul. It was a little place called Ilsan, north of Seoul. And some coworkers oh yeah, come, there's a foreigner bar. I was like, really? Foreigner bar? I had no idea such a thing existed. And on a Friday night, he took me to this different part of the city I'd never been in, and I walked down the stairs of this place, and it was called the Underground, very original. And I walked down, and the doors opened to the smoke-filled bar with a live band playing of all foreigners playing musicians, and there was 100, white people drunk in this bar, and I was just like, what the hell? Where did these people go? I'll walk around for days without seeing a non-Korean person. What's going on? And then you just found out that people came from far and wide to this bar every Friday night, and then a whole lot of adventures ensued after that, because then I made a network of drinking buddies. Yeah. So Andrew, what were things like? Well, I mean, aside from doing YouTube, what was it like when you first arrived? When you first landed in Japan? What were you doing at the end of the day? What were you doing at the end of a work day what was happening, that post-work life for you?
Yeah. Well, so the first town that I lived in was over in Ibaraki, and it was a small town. It was about 30,000 people, and out in the countryside and everything. And so there were only, 5 other ALTs in town. And so we quickly became our own little network. We quickly realized hey, we're the only ones here in town. There's a power plant there, a big nuclear facility there, but those foreigners would just come to town to work and then would leave at the end of the day, so they weren't really sticking around town, whereas we were living there. And so
By the way,
my,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but those foreigners who were coming to work at the nuclear power plant, were they like engineers? Were they like Western foreigners?
So they were engineers and scientists, and they were from all over the world. We did meet them occasionally, but they didn't actually live in town. So
okay,
they would just come into town to work, and then they would be gone by the end of the day. So, but yeah, like we realized like, hey, let's all try to hang out together. And I think it's different now. I live in a town where there's, oh goodness, 70 elementary schools and 25, 30 junior highs, and 500,000 high schools. So there's so many foreigners here in this town that it's kind of like, yeah, whatever, we'll hang out whenever. But back then it was like, those are the only people that you can connect with when your Japanese isn't that great, and when you're trying to find your way around town, or when you're just trying to get there. And I was new, and there were a couple other ALTs that were had been here for a few years, and so Friday nights were go out and go to the bar, go do karaoke. Like we always seemed to be hanging out, and it was kind of like a little ALT family almost.
Yeah, that's I when I think back again, and I'm using the reference of those Korea days, and I'll fast forward later on to like my Japan days. But I mean, when I was at a point when I first arrived, my first year, like when I would see another foreigner, like you guys would, like the two foreigners would like basically run across traffic, stop traffic to like say hello to each other, and exchange email addresses that you couldn't check at home because no one had a computer at home. You'd have to use it at work. My Yahoo Mail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So how about you, PJ? When you first arrived in Himeji back in the day, what was I'm using air quotes here, what was the foreigner scene like?
It was very similar to what he just described. Andrew described. It's there was a network of ALTs. Himeji had a large number of them. There must have been 30 or 40 of them. But we'd go out and drink and eat, and there was always a few Japanese that were very connected to that group. So there maybe have been a community of about maybe 40 foreigners and about half as many Japanese, and then we would regularly go to the bars or go to the castle and drink on the moat. Things like that, so very similar. That was a big part of our evening, and I was in ALT at the time, so I didn't have a lot of homework to do. There's not a lot of prep involved that took place outside of school.
Yeah.
Oh, so, yeah. I mean, not that I didn't prep, of course I did, but it was done at school. So when I was home, I was literally free. Mm-hmm. I haven't felt free in the last 15 years, but at that time, it was just great. The idea that every night, I was young. I was in my mid-20s. It was an exploration. Sometimes I just get on my bike, my little mama chari, and just head out in a direction.
Yeah, no, I think when I fast forward to 2008 when I first came to Japan, although I wasn't like living alone and whatnot, for those of you listening, and both of you gents know, I've got 2 kids now. I'm the dad, the family man, and all that, and which is a whole other whacker responsibility. I didn't have that, so it would literally be, actually when I first arrived, I worked at the school I worked at. We had a campus in Akashi, so I worked in Akashi. I lived in Kobe, and my wife worked in Osaka. And the reason why we chose to live in Kobe because it was halfway in between. Like literally, that's why we chose Kobe. And I was the only male at my campus, so it kind of felt a little bit lonely when I first got there because we didn't, there was no foreigner scene. I wasn't an ALT. I wasn't a jet. I was working at a private school, and of course I had my wife, but I didn't have any friends at all, and I didn't have a chance to meet friends. And like literally, at the end of the day, shift is done. There's no one to say like, "Hey, do you want to go for a beer or anything?" Just because like it was all of my colleagues were married and stuff, and they would just like go home, and I'd be like, "Oh, this really sucks." So occasionally we had this one or two male colleagues from different campuses who would visit, and it was just like, wow, yay, a guy. and then like it always be like, do you want to go drink beer after work? Do you want to go drink beer? We go to Santa Mia and Kobe. We can drink some beer at the pub. I'll buy you a beer. And then they go, yeah, sure. And then I was like, accidentally sent a text to my wife like, I'm not coming home for dinner. I'm gonna have a beer with so and so. But that only happened like once in a blue moon during my first year in Japan. So it was just so it was. I spent a lot of time. Again, that's I think why I was so involved in YouTube.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we really, because there were only 5 of us in town, we really felt, and I feel like maybe I was the driving force behind it as well, because I was like, I don't know anybody in this town, so hey, we should all get together and go out to dinner on Friday nights, and that continued for the few years that I lived in that town. But yeah, it was one of those things. Yeah, where it was like, I'm the only ALT at my school. I'm the only foreigner at my school. Everybody's talking in Japanese. Sometimes you just want to hang out with some people that are going to speak English. That especially since I had just gotten here, my Japanese was terrible, and I just sat at my desk and didn't really talk to anybody. And I just got to talk to some foreigners or somebody that can speak English.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was kind of one of those like, all right, Friday night's the night. Okay, I can relax. I don't have to worry about saying the wrong things in Japanese or not understanding something. It was a relaxing time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose too, like what I found my first year or so in Japan, aside from not having male coworkers, I found like there were definitely in Kobe. There's a ton of foreigners, right? Lots of foreigners, and they're there for a variety of reasons. You get a lot of foreigners who are like researchers and stuff who work at the Riken Science Institute. You have people who work for Nestle and big companies. The foreigners who are there with their families on their big expat packages, right? They don't tend to mix so much with like maybe the teacher crowd. Then you would have like the Jets, and I know the city of Kobe has a lot of Jets, but they were very, very cliquish. Jets would hang out with Jets. They didn't really seem to associate with other people so much. That's definitely what I found. I think looking at it at the time when I first got there, I definitely felt like some kind of bizarre form of elitism, which I didn't understand. And then I met.
I don't know how. Yes, I think elitism is part of it, but I do feel that's very much true to this day. I'm a uni teacher, and I hang out with uni teachers. I wouldn't hang out with a Jet.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't hang out with a Jet either. But I mean, one of my best friends was a Jet, so I kind of have to.
Well, but the thing is, I don't think it's elitism. I just think the
cliquishness of what you do, maybe, huh?
Yeah, well, the life experience is so radically different that other than the fact that you're foreigners, you don't have anything in common.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I mean, let's be honest. We wouldn't hang out with those people if we were back in our home countries. We all have. You hang out with coworkers and people who share your hobbies and or whatever, right? So I don't think it's that different here. Just we notice it more here because you'll see a foreigner and you're thinking, well, hey, I'm not invited to that. Why? But the reality is, why would you be if you're in a very different work experience or I didn't.
That's a good point.
I don't hang out with Kaiwa teachers not because I'm being elitist, but I don't know them. They don't share my world.
Yeah, true. No, that's a very good point. And I wasn't saying that to slag on Jets. I was just saying that as in like I noticed like a distinct large group of foreigners in my neighborhood. And...
Oh, you can slag on Jets. I think we were all. I was a Jet at one time, so slag away.
No, but I suppose it's very valid. Like for example, my position right now, with what I do, I'm very involved in my job. My job takes up a lot of my life. I'm very, very passionate about doing things like professional development and always improving what I do. But then outside of work, of course, I have a family. And I think right away when you meet people who have families, that's a whole other kind of category, right? Like they're just kind of normally that's what they do. But aside from that, I mean, like what am I interested in? I'm interested in when I'm in Japan and the internet works properly, I'm interested in things like geocaching or Pokemon Go. Or nature photography, chasing bugs around the park, So I'm probably gonna more so, like you said, hang out with people who have those similar interests, right?
Well, and when I first got here, all the people in town all worked for the same dispatch company that I worked for. So
Okay.
there was already this sense of like, well, I've got to see you once a month anyways for our quote unquote training meetings, and then hey, we might as well grab a beer after work on Friday, or hey, let's go do karaoke, or hey, there's a festival, let's all meet up and hang out at the festival this weekend. Like there was already that we're already working for the same company, so we've got that in common. We're all ALTs.
Yeah.
And it's good because we all work for the same company, so you're going to hang out with those people and complain about your job, and other people aren't going to really get what you're complaining about, and you like to talk about things with people you have stuff in common with. So
exactly.
Well, I suppose that, like, when I think back to and I'm going to assume I never had this experience in Japan, but like when I was in Korea, when I would go to an expat bar, you'd walk into a bar, there might be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 other people in there. And for example, the year I lived in Busan, or the year and a half I lived in Busan, there was no U.S. Army base there. So basically that meant that pretty much every foreigner you saw was an English teacher. So I'd walk into this bar that was packed with English teachers drinking on a Friday night. And, pretty much everyone had kind of a similar story. I'm young, I'm just out of school, I'm, this is my first job, I wanted to travel, or, I was working at this other job for a little while after university, but I didn't like it and I wanted to travel, so now here I am teaching. Like everyone kind of had a bit of a similar narrative. So I suppose it kind of, it was very easy to kind of gel with the community, because there wasn't a lot of diversity even within the foreigner community.
Yeah. But I also think it gets to what you were saying earlier about how a foreigner would cross the street to talk to you. That's very much the size of the city that you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in Himeji, you would, back in the 90s, there were maybe 200 Westerners in town, maybe. So you saw somebody, you did cross the street and talk to them, or at least say hi, right? Move to a bigger city, Osaka, we don't even look each other in the eye anymore.
Yeah, people avoid eye contact blatantly, right?
And you can tell the real Inaka boys, because they'll actually, they'll come up to you and ask you to go to dinner, and I'm going, I've never even talked to you before, but they just, I think, it has to do with the size of the community that you're in and how unusual or special it might be to see someone else. Of your culture, of your race, of your language, whatever the category might be.
Okay. Yeah, that happened to me this week, actually. I was at a coffee shop, and not a whole lot of foreigners go to this coffee shop, and I saw a couple there and was like, in your head you're like, I should say something, I should say hi, but you never really know, and it's just that awkward. And then they turned around, and it was actually somebody that I had already met, and they'd recognized me, and when they turned around, I recognized them, and so then we had a nice conversation. But it was just rare that I would it's not that I'm not an outgoing person, it's not that I don't want to talk to people, it's just that, like,
you don't want to be a weirdo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Even if you are.
Right.
Well, we're all a little bit weirdos. That's why we're talking to you, Kevin.
Exactly. That's why you're on the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan. So now I can remember one time being on a train in Seoul with a couple of friends on a Saturday afternoon and having this really excited North American guy, possibly Canadian, come just like running up to us on the train. Hi guys, hi, how are you? How are you? Where are you from? What do you do? Like rapid fire talk. And then he explained how he was actually teaching English on this little island off of the coast of Incheon in Korea, where he was the only foreigner who lived on this island. And he had like 3 days off in Seoul or something. He was like, do you guys want to hang out? Do you want to hang out now? Do you want to go have a drink? And we were just like, he was so intense, he scared the heck out of us. But
Sure.
I suppose, in his situation, he was just like, wow, someone who speaks English.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so fast forward, it's, current days, modern times. So I'll start with you, PJ. So obviously you made a comment earlier You said you haven't had free time in 15 years.
Mhm.
Now, you know, you have gone from being an ALT working you have Sister Cities program, I believe, in the beginning, right? And then a
Yes.
jet.
Oh, very good memory, sir.
Oh, I remember. And now you are a university professor, instructor.
No, well, instructor, yeah, sure.
Instructor.
Part-time.
So obviously you had to kind of change your credentials in a way in order to do that. I suppose that's what.
Yeah, I did a master's program here, an American University, Temple University, from Philadelphia. They've got a program here in Osaka and Tokyo as well. So I did my TESOL, basically a master's in TESOL, teaching English as a second language, and now I'm doing my PhD. Well, I'm procrastinating, but yeah, in theory, I'm doing my PhD now.
So, and I mean, you've had other iterations of jobs and whatnot.
Yeah.
So so with all that, you've gone from working full time to being a part time student and working full time. Working on your graduate degree. How has kind of the entertainment world, and just obviously due to the fact that you're more mature in life, as you get older, different.
Come on, Kevin. You know me. I'm not more mature.
Sure enough. Fair enough. But I mean, back to those days in Himeji where you were, hanging out with that group of ALTs and the Japanese hanger-offers or hanger-oners or whatever it may have been, to now. What are the kind of things that you find yourself doing now for entertainment?
Well,
to occupy your time.
Yeah, I guess now the internet's changed everything, and it's now it's Netflix, Hulu, and iTunes. So I'm in many ways watching the same programs I would watch if I were back in the U.S. where I'm from. Doesn't change, so that has radically changed. That in terms of my home entertainment, it's a very, very different scene. I haven't watched Japanese TV in maybe a decade. I'm not a big fan of variety programs, and wide shows don't really do it for me. So other than the occasional TV drama that I always binge watch, I don't ever watch a TV as it comes out. If I can't have a whole season, I don't watch it. So there's that, and then otherwise entertainment's not that. It's just that the only real change would be just living in Osaka. I mean, so I live in a dining bar area. There are 4 or 5 bars in my neighborhood. There are restaurants. Uber Eats delivers. I get half the week. I get dinner order delivered by Uber Eats.
Oh, is that in Osaka now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which is a little bit different because Uber Eats in North America are literally Uber drivers that are not currently driving someone around.
Yeah, okay.
In Osaka, there is no Uber. Uber only exists in Tokyo, I believe, in Japan. So the Uber Eats program is basically just people on motorbikes and bicycles delivering food. And right now, it's free because they're just testing it. So there's no penalty for me to use it. I'm not paying anything beyond the price of the food.
Okay, that's a huge thing here in Beijing, by the way. It's been here for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not Uber, but they have lots of their own.
Yeah, their own. Yeah.
Companies. I think in many ways Beijing's like way ahead of the curve, and then.
Well, Japan's often behind the curve.
Yeah, but even more so than like North America, like when it comes to things like they say Beijing is probably going to be soon the first cashless city in the world. Everything is done through WePay and Alipay. So it's pretty amazing. You just order all the food you want. You order through your phone. You order everything through your phone. Everything. It's amazing. You just push a few buttons and shit shows up at your door. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay, how about you, Andrew? When you think now, obviously you're living in a bigger place now, so that's a factor.
Yeah.
But you're 6 years older than you were when you first got here.
Gosh, yeah. I'm feeling it. No,
I'm 16 years older than I was when I first arrived in Asia. So it's and obviously you're in a different phase of life.
right.
Now you're soon to be a senior. No, what I mean is this. Obviously as we get older, our interests change. We have different things that entertain us, different hobbies, whatever it may be. So how do you find that, like, you know, in May of 2018, how is your entertainment life different than it was when you first arrived?
Yeah, well, when I first got here, you know, there was no Netflix, so you know, obviously that's changed a little bit. So online entertainment and stuff like that.
That's a game changer, huh?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is,
definitely. It's again, it's that kind of like escape. Like you can to your detriment, you can sit in your house all day and watch American TV and forget. Oh wait, I live in Japan. Like
you're sitting at home watching like documentaries about Japan on Netflix.
Yeah, right.
While you're in Japan.
But yeah, that's changed. I would say that, like, so when I first got to Japan during orientation, I was roommates with a guy, and he actually lives like right next door to me, and you know, works at the same place that I do now. So it's like we kept in touch over the years, as we worked for dispatch company, and a friend of mine from college, he lives not too far from here, and his friend from college lives not too far from here. So we all kind of like get together now as, like, you know, once a month, or, you know, in big holidays in Japan when we all have days off and travel more. So we've kind of just formed like this little group. Like, we all kind of live in different places, but you know, when there's, you know, Golden Week or whatever, we try to get out and explore some parts of Japan that maybe we've not been to before, or, you know, some place that we can just jump in the car and drive to for the day and explore. Which for me, my first year in Japan, I didn't have a car, so everything was on foot, or, you know, you're walking to the train station and going that way. But yeah, just being able to just kind of jump in the car and go wherever you want in Japan is really nice.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, and that's very interesting. I know, like, myself and PJ, we're not drivers, right? Not in Japan.
Yeah.
Anyway. Not in Japan.
Here. No.
Yeah. I mean, like, I was a very active driver in Canada, but in Japan, not the case. But that was there was no necessity. You know,
right.
I lived in the heart of Kobe. So I didn't need to drive a car because I lived, you know, just for the sake of where I lived. I probably would have only used my car maybe on Sundays or something, and I would have had to pay, you know, $200 a month in parking fees just to keep it at my apartment, yet never use the thing, right? Yeah. So okay, now here's a question that just popped into my mind. I'm gonna throw it to you guys. The three of us actually know each other all through YouTube. I mean, that's how I met PJ when I was living in Korea back in the day, back in Busan, hence the name Busan Kevin on YouTube. Very creative.
Yeah.
You can tell I didn't have a long game plan for YouTube at that point. Because I left Busan like 6 months after I started my YouTube channel. You know, I came across PJ because, you know, had a very serious Japanese girlfriend, and I mean, as in she's not. I mean, well, she is serious, I suppose. But what I meant is, like, I was very serious about her, and I was thinking, I think I might move to Japan someday. So I was just trying to find all the content I could on YouTube about Japan, and like I mentioned, I came across you, PJ. I came across Tokyo Kuni, and Softy Papa, and three drastically different styles of YouTubing, of vlogging. But I really liked all three styles. Very different, but I liked it. You know, you'd be sitting in your apartment doing like whiskey reviews and talking about food and this and that. Softy Papa would be like wandering through these abandoned farms and friggin' rural Japan with like wild ghosts running around and stuff, talking in a soft voice. And then Tokyo Kuni would have these like well-polished, really entertaining, funny videos about different aspects of life in the big city of Tokyo. You know, and then Andrew, years later, I came across Andrew on YouTube when I was still active at that point 6 years ago. But, you know, all three of us were very active YouTubers, but all three of us could probably describe ourselves at this point as not being extremely active YouTubers.
No, not only that, I don't watch YouTube anymore. I just, the whole company just disgusts me, but that's a topic for another day.
Well, what I'm curious about. Well, I don't. Okay, so let's not get into the ickiness of all of the inner workings of YouTube. But I'm just curious because I still use YouTube a lot because I mean you're not gonna find great bug videos in other places, guys.
Oh dear God.
Oh, it's true, man. It's true, guys. For you that are listening, if you don't know, I'm really hardcore into entomology. I love bugs. I love insects. Like really studying them a lot.
He really does.
I really do love insects, but mostly like the connections, their impact on the environment, and da 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 da. But there's more than just like looking at little bugs. It's deeper, guys. It's deeper. It's about teaching, conservation. Come on. Creating a future generation of environmental stewards. That's what I say. But yeah. So but I mean the whole vlogging scene. No, you're right. Like I mean, I'm not. Yeah. But so I'm just curious, and be nice about this, PJ.
Okay.
What happened? When I first met you, you were a very active YouTuber, very active video blogger, and that's how we made our Japan connection. When I met you, Andrew, you're a very active video blogger, and that's how we made our Japan connection. How did you kind of fall out of love with YouTube, PJ, in an abridged version?
There is no way to say it without getting nasty. I don't like the company. I don't like basically I feel YouTube used content creators back before they had the algorithms that searched for music and video. Remember, they were under threat. They were being sued by all the big people, all the record labels and movie labels. And they pushed content creators as a way to say, look, we're not about just copying stuff. We have we have bloggers. And they loved bloggers until they developed their algorithms to the level of sophistication that they could nail you for even thinking about posting a music video or a TV show, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Once they did that, then they changed all the metrics. They made it hard for people to make any money or to do things. So for me, it was not the community per se, but the way I thought that YouTube used and still continues to use content creators in a diminishing. It's not mutual anymore. Basically, they've disadvantaged people who make their own content, and even the big name people like here in Japan, some of the big bloggers. They're called YouTubers here. They don't get what we got for nothing. Part of that, I really had to discuss with the way I thought YouTube handled it. And then secondly, on a more personal level, you know me, I'm not a Japan fan. It's just where I live. I could live in Russia if the job and the pay were right.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I studied Japanese history. It was my major in college, and I love Japan, but I'm not what you call a Japan fan by any stretch.
No, you're like me. We're on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And a lot of my fans were Japan fans, and I just didn't know how to handle them.
Yeah.
Because again, that's like a otaku kind of super hardcore
kind of a cult of Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not critiquing them per se because I have my own things. I love figure skating and I love Galactica and other sci-fi, and so I get the fandom of it, but I didn't know how to communicate with a lot of people who were watching my videos, and it made me increasingly feeling awkward or at least ill-equipped.
You used to share with me a lot of the communication like people would give you. Like, I mean, you weren't telling me names or usernames, but you were like, Kevin, like, check out this email, or this is what this person said, and you got a lot more like out of left field stuff than I ever got.
Yeah, I do. There's something in my forehead that only crazies can see.
Yeah, because you share stuff with me. I'm like, wow, that's insane, man, and it was just like a constant.
Well, I used to get messages like, I'm 13 years old. I'm being beaten up in Kentucky. I want to go to Japan where there is no bullying. And I didn't know how to deal with that.
No bullying in Japan, right? Yeah.
Well, no, but my problem with the Japan fans or whatever that be, they've created a fantasy world that's not necessarily real.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know how, and more power to them. I have a fantasy world. I'm not going to share it with you now, but my point being is that fantasy worlds are great when you know they're fantasy. A lot of these people weren't able to distinguish the the Japan of, our generation of early YouTubers, what, the second wave or third wave of bloggers.
I think we were the second wave, you and I, PJ.
Yeah. And they took that to be real.
Yeah.
Their fantasies of Japan to be real, or manga or anime, or their interest in martial arts, and all those are very, I'm not critiquing the subcultures, but that isn't Japan. Just like you can say what any subculture in America, hot rodders. Hot rodders are a small part of America, but you wouldn't say that really represents Japan.
Well,
America.
like how the same way people look at Japan and drifters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what Japan is like? The Fast and the Furious, so drifters. Like that's actually a minute subculture.
Yeah, and as a YouTuber, I just couldn't handle that the mantle of responsibility to explain this, or why you said you did this, but I was told in Japan you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, well, yeah, you're not. I'm a human being, and like most human beings, I break cultural rules constantly.
You weren't supposed to. You weren't supposed to walk. You weren't supposed to eat and walk at the same time. I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. I'm hungry and I'm Canadian.
Yeah, I got that a lot, and I used to tell them, in Osaka, people eat and walk every day.
Actually, look around.
Well, it didn't compute to them because their little, again, rarefied view, and I'm not knocking it, but I just couldn't handle. I guess to me, if we didn't have labels back then, but I wouldn't have labeled my video blogs Japan specific.
Yeah, no.
I did whiskey, yeah. I did beer, I did Galactica, I did high school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In those initial days, I suppose, like when I first found you on YouTube, absolutely not. You were a video blogger living in Japan. So you were vlogging, but you lived in Japan, but you were vlogging about, you love Galactica, lots of stuff about that, lots of stuff about your teaching life. You worked at a really interesting school, and with a lot of a lot of very interesting stuff going on there. And you talked about whiskey and beer and food and stuff like that. You just happened to be in Japan, and you weren't like.
Remember our 2 beers in what was it? 2 beers in Japan.
2 beers in Asia.
2 beers in Asia.
Before Google Hangouts, when we actually, to have our collaboration channel, we actually had to meet in person. Folks, if you're not familiar with this, I'll put links in the show notes. It's still out there. I think there's like 10 episodes of 2 Beers in Asia where PJ and I would meet up and we'd do beer reviews. Essentially, we'd drink beer and talk about Japan. And this is before we could record Skype stuff. This is before Google Hangouts. The only way to actually do a collab was to meet in person, which our schedules were insane. So we can meet like once a month, maybe. So then we'd shoot like 4 or 5 videos, or 3 or 4 videos, drinking a lot of different beers.
Those were good times.
Those are really good times. Those are pre-children for me. Then we'd edit them up and post them up, and I'd always get funny comments. So like people's like, "Oh, I can see you're getting more and more drunk in these different videos." It's like, well, because we'd spend an entire afternoon together with a bag of beer. And we'd find like different locations maybe to make it look like we were doing it a little bit different.
And people, and you're right, people could figure out what order they were filmed in.
the progress of our inebriation. Andrew, over to you, man.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So like you even made a comment, early, like at the very beginning of this podcast when you said, that you basically alluded to not being very active on YouTube anymore. So what's going on with that?
Well, just to jump back, like I remember because I came to Japan originally in 2000, just after high school, and then came back in 2008, and that was around 2008 is when I really decided, I need to really focus my college career or my college life on getting finished with college and getting to Japan as soon as I graduate. And so I went through and found a whole bunch of YouTubers that were in Japan that weren't like sensational and that I was going to learn things from because I wanted to know what life was like in Japan, and like that's how I came across your channel. But and I even remember, oh gosh, there's a comment on one of your videos from like 2008 of me like, oh, I can't wait to live in Japan someday. It's gonna be so great. Oh,
you're one of those, one of the many.
Yeah. but that's just the way it was.
Yeah,
but
of course, and I love the fact that so many excited folks watched my videos and commented and all that. As long as they weren't trolling me, I was happy.
oh no, yeah. And so, like I said, when I first came to Japan, I wanted to show my friends and family back home like what I was doing. I never really had any intention of growing a channel or contact with other people that had interest in Japan.
Yeah.
It was really just my own thing. And as I started making videos, I kind of realized like I don't like a lot of the content that people make in Japan. And it's not anything personal against them. A lot of them are really great people that I've met. A lot of them are not that great. But just personality wise, you don't click with everybody. That's fine.
Of course, just because they make YouTube videos doesn't mean they're the same as you.
Yeah, totally. And so when I started really focusing on like, okay, I'm going to make content for YouTube. What does that look like for me? I didn't want it to be this like flashy running around with a camera freaking out. Oh, this is Akihabara. Look how crazy Japan is. Oh, Tokyo's so wacky and
Maid cafe. Oh.
Yeah, like this is what Japan's really like. Like I just that's not my experience, and that's not how I wanted to like represent my time in Japan. And I'm a teacher, and so I was like, well, why don't I start focusing things on videos on if somebody wants to come to Japan as a teacher, what can they expect in the classroom? What can they expect in their day-to-day life? What can they just expect in life in general as
what's normal living, right? Normal living for someone who's going to come to Japan and do what you do.
Right. And because I saw videos like yours and other people that were doing that, and it wasn't this, it was helpful for me at the time because I wasn't in Japan yet. And so because of that, I've gotten messages from people saying like, I saw one the other day that I got a couple years ago from somebody that, hey, I changed my major to this so I can be a teacher, so I can come to Japan because I saw your videos. And I was like, that's crazy. Don't change your life because of anything I do.
It's pretty wild when you get that, when you realize you can make that kind of impact on people's lives. Because I've actually I've gotten those comments of people who are like, I'm a teacher now and I live here because you inspired me in your videos. I'm like, what? Oh my god. I hope
that's a lot of pressure.
I hope things are working out for you well, because
right. And
yeah,
because and that's what I realized, that like if I'm going to make videos, I want them to be helpful to people, because that's like that's just the type of person I am anyways. But like that's just the type of video I want to make, is if it's not going to be, and then the reason that I've kind of stopped taking a break for the past few months is that I just kind of felt like I was getting into a rut of like not being creative and not really making the things, it's like, oh, I'm going to eat this weird food and make a video about it. And that's fine. There's a lot of strange stuff in Japan, but like, I don't know.
I think at the end of the day, if it becomes a chore, stop doing it, because like none of us are making money from it, right?
Oh no. Right. And like I've gotten a lot of messages even the past few months when I haven't been making videos. I've gotten some messages on Twitter from people that were saying, "Hey, like I'm headed to Japan to be a teacher, and send me a list of questions, and I try to answer them as best as possible." That's what I enjoy doing, is just informing people instead of I'm not a J vlogger. I'm not one of these people that's like, here's a 20-minute video of me doing my laundry and walking around my house, and like that's just not who I am. Hey, if you want to make that video, go for it, but like that's not.
Well, there are people
that doesn't do anything. That doesn't do anything for me. And like at this point, the amount of people that have been watching videos, that wouldn't do anything for them. Like like they'd be like, why? What? I don't need to see another apartment tour. I appreciate it, but
So it's an interesting crux. I mean, the reason why I thought of this was well, I wanted to start this off talking about our entertainment lives, how our entertainment lives have changed. But YouTube is something that was a big part of our Japan lives, and like initially, well, maybe not initially for you, PJ, but at one point,
Yeah.
and that's changed for us. I mean, and as we grow, I suppose with anything, we change our interests, we change our priorities, and I mean, actually, to be honest, when I started this podcast is when I kind of unofficially kind of ducked out of doing YouTube. And I do put up content from time to time. Obviously, you guys all know that, but I was like this like ravenous YouTuber. I was putting up tons of content. Like so much content, like literally 4 or 5 videos a week for years. And then eventually I got kind of disgusted with some things. For me, it was within the air quotes community and the behavior of different people. And I was just like, you know what?
Speak.
What?
I know some of whom you speak.
Yeah. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired of this BS. I'm just gonna, you know what? I love listening to podcasts when I'm on the train every day, commuting to work. I got my little iPod. I'm not watching YouTube videos. I'm listening to podcasts. You know what? It would be cool to make a podcast about Japan, and it's a whole different demographic. And a much more loyal demographic, and a much less vitriol demographic, and a much more appreciative demographic. And I decided to make long form shows, which I enjoy listening because I was often out running when I trained for my marathon. Like PJ, when you met me, I was like a marathon runner, and so I was running for like hours a day, needing to listen to stuff. So that's why I got into podcasts. So I think once I started becoming a podcaster, I found that was more fulfilling and satisfying. And yeah, so that's for me why I kind of moved away. But you guys are in Japan. I'll be in Japan the end next month. Woo!
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You're gonna be there, right, PJ? Gonna have a chance to meet you? Hope so.
Of course.
Hope so. The kids are expecting it. The whole fam is.
I miss them. I miss them more than I miss you.
That's okay. That's okay. Understandable. Andrew, I know you're far away. We probably won't have a chance to meet up, but
yeah, I was looking at my calendar the other day, and I'm working, so
yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So gonna have another.
How dare you have a life, Andrew?
How dare you have to work? How dare you?
I'll probably be down in Kobe in July, August-ish. So I usually go down there during the summer, anyway. So.
Yeah, actually.
We should meet up.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
You folks, I met Andrew like in person for the first time, and just before I left Japan. When that was, so that would have been in like the very end of July, or was it beginning of August? It was like one of my last days in Kobe, and you're like, I'm in town now. What are you up to? And I'm like, well, it was like the morning or something. I said, well, had to go shopping at Uniqlo to buy like kids' clothes before we left for Beijing. At the big Uniqlo and Harborland down at Umie Shopping Mall. And I'm standing there like looking at some clothes or something, and I hear, hey, I know you. And I turn, and there's Andrew. I was like, holy crap. But it
definitely wasn't stalking you.
No, it was really awesome. It was really awesome. And you were with a group of friends who were waiting for you. So we literally had like about 15 or 20 minutes. To chat
I was like,
in Uniqlo.
I gotta find this guy. I gotta find this guy before he goes to China. And they're just like, what are you? All right, just go.
And
what are you
talking my kids
about?
And my wife were like, well, my wife understood because I'd explained who you were beforehand. There's this guy I might have a chance to meet up with. I might not. Yeah. And then my kids are just really confused. Who's this dude you're talking to? But being my kids, they were fun about it. Yeah. So there's gonna be, so for you folks that are listening, June 22nd, Friday, Just Japan podcast meetup in Kobe, Japan, at the Harbor Tavern, starting at 6:00. Come meet me, meet other people. There'll be a lot of other people there, and have some drinks and some food. And I will announce this later on as well. You guys, thank you so much. This is like a nice, long, chunky, old school Just Japan podcast. I love the long versions, and actually, I usually get the most positive feedback from those. So, guys, Andrew, if people do want to contact you or find you on social media, where can they do that?
Yeah, Facebook.com/Higgins in Japan, and like I'll probably start making videos again here soon. Like it just was just this like, I don't want to do anything.
It's like writer's block.
I don't like the community. I don't like anybody. I don't like myself. I don't like my own videos.
Oh, like
and then
yourself.
it's like,
like
well,
yourself.
okay, just yeah.
The love-hate thing.
Yeah, totally. So it'll be I'll be back. But yeah, no, if people want to send me messages or contact me about life in Japan, like I love answering questions and I love trying to help people out as much as I can. So
Nice.
don't feel like if you're gonna move to Japan like you're completely alone. There's a lot of people here that
you've got Mr. Higgins right there.
Yeah, there's a lot
in your corner, guys. He's in your corner.
Yeah, a lot of people here that have been through it for a while, so we can help you out or try to.
So, PJ, are you on social media right now?
I am, but only on Instagram.
Okay.
I don't want anyone to find me on Facebook and Twitter. I just ignore. By the way, Kevin, I love you dearly, but please don't tag me anymore in Twitter things.
Okay. No
because
problem.
that's only for whiskey and figure skating.
Okay, two very different things.
Well, yeah, but my saying that whenever you or one of our mutual friends tags me, I suddenly get a lot of interest in what tourist things are there to do in Osaka, and I'm going, that's just not my thing.
Okay, I gotcha.
But Instagram, Kansai, KANSAI _P_PEE _Jay.
Okay, so there you go. On Instagram, Kansai PJ. Link will be in the show notes, folks, at justjapanstuff.com. I apologize for polluting your Twitter feed with crap that isn't about whiskey.
No, it's always well intended. I'm just saying, no, you misunderstand, Kevin. It's always well intended. I can't service these people.
Nice. Gotcha.
Andrew has a bigger heart than I do.
He does.
For now.
His heart shrunk 2 sizes that day. Oh, nice. Oh, the Who's in Whoville. Oh, gosh. So, folks, guys, thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you, PJ, for coming on the podcast yet again.
No problem.
Nice.
The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is... Please note, the new number is...
All right, guys, that was an awesome conversation with PJ and Andrew. And, of course, the links to all of their stuff, social media stuff, will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. So go there and check that out. Guys, Andrew, PJ, thank you for joining us on the podcast yet again. Always fun conversations, that's for sure. And thank you guys for listening to the Just Japan podcast. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome and a half. Remember, we got the Just Japan podcast meetup happening in Kobe, Japan on the 20th of June. 22nd of June. The Friday. In Sanomiya in Kobe, Japan at the Harbor Tavern, 6 o'clock. And again, if there's any changes, anything comes up, I'll keep you posted on social media. So you need to follow me on Twitter at JLandKev, and you need to follow the Just Japan Stuff Facebook page if you want to be up to date on things like that. That's it, guys, for the Just Japan podcast. Remember, you can also email me questions at justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. Contact me on social media. I'm always pretty quick to get back to people about things. So, yeah, that's it, guys. That does it for another episode, another week. Please help the podcast grow by sharing it on your social media. Spreading the word. Get more people listening. Get more earballs on the Just Japan podcast. All right, guys. That's it. This week we're done. It's a wrap. Dropping the mic. Not really. My name's Kevin, and I'm the host of the Just Japan podcast. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen. You're awesome. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy. And I will be talking to you real soon. All right, folks, a little bonus story for you. Okay, guys? If you stick around to the end of the theme song for the Just Japan podcast, you can hear a story that I first recorded back in 2009 on YouTube, all about the worst smell ever. Stick around. Check it out. It's not about Japan, but I think it's a pretty amusing story. So it is a beautiful spring day, and it's just awesome. I'm off to Tokyo in 2 days, and it's a gorgeous day. It's probably about 20 degrees right now. And since it's a spring day, I wanted to tell you a spring-themed story. All right, now this has nothing to do actually with my time living in Asia, Korea, or Japan at all. This is a Canadian-based springtime story. Now, years ago, in the late 90s, after I'd finished university, I had gone back to school, and I was taking a 2-year electronic game design course at New Brunswick Community College in Miramichi, New Brunswick. And it was the spring of my first year, finishing up my first year in the program, and winters in northern New Brunswick are pretty rough. I'm kind of getting winded here because I'm walking up a hill. Winters in northern New Brunswick are pretty tough. A lot of snow. And, spring was around. It was near the end of March, beginning of April. I believe we had like a Chinook, which is like what they call an Indian summer. And, so it was, it basically got really, really warm. I have no idea where I'm walking right now. It got really, really warm. And we still had a lot of snow on the ground, but I think the temperature went up to like 10 or 12 degrees, which after months of minus double digits, it's pretty amazing. So a crew of us, after school that afternoon, we all went to the liquor store and we bought beer, and we went up to our dormitories, our residence. And I was probably in my mid-20s early 20s still at this point. Older than a normal university student, but not much. And we had a barbecue, which we had refurbished. We set up the barbecue outside. We started barbecuing. And so I had a big Coleman cooler, threw a bunch of beer in there, a bunch of meat, and a whole bunch of us, we set up lawn chairs. We were wearing like shorts and t-shirts, sitting in the snow with our beer in the snow. It was kind of weird. Snow everywhere, but warm enough to wear t-shirts and shorts, if you're a crazy Canadian. And this house doesn't really fit in, does it? Look at that house behind me. Yeah. Oh well. Okay, so yeah. So we're having this barbecue, great time, drinking lots of beer. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So the party's finished, everything's done. I think we drank ourselves really stupid. Packed up all this stuff. I ate all my meat. I think I had some burgers or something. I ate all that up, and so everything's done. The beer's gone. So we pack everything up and throw everything, all the garbage away. And I bring my cooler up to my room and put it away I would keep it at the foot of my bed. I had a suite actually, so I had like a living room and a bedroom, and like a kind of like a kitchenette. And there you go. And life went on as normal. About a week later, there was a strange smell when I woke up in the morning. A bit of a weird smell. I didn't know what it was, but I opened up the windows and it went away. I came home from school that afternoon, and my room had that kind of weird smell again. Couldn't figure out what it was. Maybe something coming from another room somewhere down the hallway. There's some pretty grubby guys that lived on my floor. So this went on day after day after day. And as the days went on, the smell got worse and worse. I'd get home from school in the afternoon and open up my door, and my windows have been closed all day. And the smell would be really bad on my place. I'd open up all the windows and the smell would go away. So finally, after about 2 weeks of this smell, now of course I waited 2 weeks because I was like a 23-year-old, 24-year-old guy, and we do that. We wait too long for things like that. I decided to search. And I started searching my apartment. I couldn't figure out where the smell was coming from. There was no leftover food in my fridge, and so I started cleaning my apartment and scrubbing and cleaning and scrubbing and cleaning. Because that's what you do. Oh, there's a Dalmatian. Hello, Mr. Dalmatian. Not a happy Dalmatian. So I started cleaning my room, and I just can't find them. I'm turning my apartment upside down, top to bottom, and I don't know where the smell is coming from. So check this out. This is all bamboo right here, all in front of me, bamboo. There's a graveyard right over here. Look at that. It's a big graveyard. Okay, so I'm checking my room out, I'm cleaning my room, and I look at my cooler, and I wonder, my cooler is about the only thing I haven't looked in. So I go to my cooler, and there can't be anything in my cooler because, I ate all my meat that time of the barbecue, and I drank all the beer, and believe me, I would not leave a beer behind. So I had a bunch of books and clothes on top of my cooler. I take them all off the cooler. I pop open the cooler, and the most ungodly smell you've ever smelled just hit me in the face. It was awful. I almost threw up. This wave of nastiness hit me. And what was in the bottom of my freaking cooler but a steak? A steak in a package, like a T-bone. It wasn't mine. So someone had bought it that day of the barbecue and threw it in my cooler without telling me. So of course I didn't have a steak, so I packed it all up, and so this cooler, my cooler at the foot of my bed, had a steak sitting in it for about 3 weeks, rotting. So the moment that smell got out, it hit the air. It just flew through my suite, out into the hallway, and through the entire residence. And I was on the 3rd floor, and it just ranked and stunk out my floor all the way down to the 1st floor. It just destroyed it. And this was a Friday afternoon. I discovered this actually just before a long weekend, luckily. And man, it was putrid. And people came from doors down, what the fuck is that smell, Kevin? I'm oh, I'm sorry guys, I'm sorry. And man, oh man, so there you go, the stinky steak. So there was not even a point of trying to clean that cooler up, man. I just took that and threw it in the dumpster behind the residence. It was funny, later on that night, we actually started having a snowstorm. And I looked, because that's Canada, weeks before it was 10 degrees and double digits above zero, and then, then there's a blizzard. I looked out my window during that blizzard, and I saw 2 guys who lived on my floor who were being really cheap and decided they wanted to try to get my cooler and recover my cooler and clean it out. And I watched them outside with a hose in the snowstorm, trying to wash it out, and then after about 10 minutes, they just gave up. They had their shirts, over their noses and stuff because it was so stinky. So there you go. There's my stinky steak spring story. And today, for some reason, the warm air just reminded me of that. Now, it doesn't smell bad, but, there you go. So, guys, thanks for listening to another long Boost on Kevin story. And I hope you've been enjoying some of the sights. Take care, everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.